Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Hi, this is Jeremy Knippel. I do blacksmithing, decorative and functional. What I'm going to start out today doing is showing a little bit on how to texture some metal, and what we'll end up with is a door grill that will go cover a window on a door, on an entry door. We'll start out by taking a couple of pieces of metal and putting them in the fire and getting them heated up so that they're red hot. Then we can hammer them and texture them. Well, I've been doing metal work for about 20 years and doing some blacksmithing stuff for probably close to 10 or a little more. It just kind of evolved from doing portable welding and fabricating, and every now and then I'd get a call for some decorative stuff, and so I would end up coming up with a way to do it, and then just started setting stuff up for doing some better decorative blacksmithing. Of course, I've worked with metal for so long that it is kind of very similar process. It's just that this particular stuff is a little more visible. Instead of fabricating a big framework to hold some beams and then having it covered up with a bunch of timber or roof. Well, this is actual blacksmithing coal. It's a little bit more refined coal than like your heating coal. You'll see some smoke there. That what that is, that's green coal that's burning and burning some of the impurities out of it, which is turning into coke, and the coke actually is what creates the fuel. There's an electric blower in the back, and this actually acts like a throttle. When I pull it back, it cuts off the air. When I push it forward, that gives it basically a draft like a fireplace. Then with this style forge, this is a side draft design, so the fire is sitting out in the open, and then the chimney is off to the side, and just natural convection will draw the heat and smoke away up into the chimney. There's times where I can, sometimes if I'm working on some bigger stuff, I'll have the flames up into here, and it'll bend the flame at 90 degrees because it's drawing that much. This will actually get hot enough to actually melt the steel, which, well up into the 2,000 degree mark, but I'm bringing this up to around the 1,500 range, just enough to get it hot enough so that you can see how it gets hot enough to start hammering. Now that I got this one half done, let that cool off, then I can hang on to this end and then hammer this end. Blacksmithing actually has been around for, I don't know how many years. There's traces of it going way back into the Chinese and sword making and stuff like that, but in the 1800s they made, of course, the blacksmiths were the guys that shoed the horses and made the nails for building houses, and kind of were the fix-all of the community, which just about every community had a blacksmith. Everything is pretty much done the same way. People have just adapted a little bit different styles or tooling and stuff to make it decorative. Done a lot of different decorative hand railings in the area for some of the contractors. Unfortunately, it's not every house that has a need for metal ironwork, but once in a while you find one that the people have a little bit more of a rustic design or type house or a cabin that some metal work actually goes good in, and they want it, and then they have a place for it, and then it just kind of accents the house. Kind of nice to be able to do some ironwork that actually just kind of touches the whole house off and really makes people, when they first walk in, just go, wow, this is really cool. So being this piece is a little shorter and it's getting a little warm because basically the heat is confined into here, so the heat's starting to draw up here. Now all of a sudden use a pair of tongs, and then what I got is a tong clip, and that basically just holds the tongs tight, and that way I don't have to grip so hard and really overwork myself on that. Unfortunately, blacksmithing really isn't a real fast moving hobby or job. I don't do a lot of high production stuff, so most of my stuff is kind of just a one of a kind or maybe one or two parts. So it's hard to really get a real production line going like some other places that just do one item in and out. it's still amazing to be able to heat up a piece of metal and bend it around or shape it or move it wherever you want it and end up with something. Blacksmithing is basically like working with clay and stamping leather. You can form metal just like clay once it's red hot, or stamp it, punch it, do whatever just like you can leather. Just a little bit left on this one, we'll have all sides that are all textured. Then part way down the sides, on each side there'll be one area in here that actually gets a cut put in there when it's red hot, and then it gets drifted out to somewhat like a D shape, so it'll actually get a shape that's like this. And what that'll do is that'll bring that little bit of a narrow piece. When that gets drifted, that'll deform that out, so it'll have a little projection out here, but it'll have a D-shaped opening. And what that opening will be is when this framework that will enclose the window, there'll be some smaller pieces that come in and will get bent in and loop around that. And we'll get to that in a little while. All right, now we got all four sides are done. Now that we got the pieces all textured around the outside edges, now I'll come in and we'll heat these areas up, and I'll use a tool that will actually cut that when it's hot. Basically, it's a really sharp chisel type with a handle on it. And then what I'll do is I'll heat that up, and I'll come in and put that in the right spot where I want that to cut that. And I'll go over to a treadle hammer. Will actually do the hammering for me. Just got it cut now. Now I'll reheat it, and then we'll actually open that up. So then that'll actually bring that out to a little more of a wider profile there, and then a bigger opening for the future part that actually goes through it. So then to open that hole up, just took a piece of scrap, hammered it to the width that I need and the thickness, and basically just a little bit of a D shape, tapered on the front, so that'll actually start that hole, and then open that up, and then bump that out when I push it all the way through. See, and that way you end up with a really nice D-shaped opening that the other part will actually come through and hook around that part. We'll lock that down. This is what that grill is gonna be like. Of course, this is the size of the window. And I'd hammer textured the parts here so that they've got the hammer marks on both sides of all the outer perimeter. And then I'd hot cut these, so then these got bubbled out. So the parts that I'll do now, they'll actually be a part that's a long piece. This will get hot cut all the way down. So I got roughly about 2 inches there. Then these will get spread open. One of these will get cut off because I won't need the length. But this end here will come in and wrap around this loop. So then that'll actually come in and separate, and then loop around each one of these loops. Sometimes the customer will have a design on hand or have an idea in their head what they want, and so I could work with that. Or actually they'll kind of give me an idea of something that they're looking for, and then I'll actually help them design it, try to get the design to match the decor. So you can see it really doesn't take too much to cut that. A lot of times it takes longer to heat the part up than it does to actually do the process. That's going to be the mark where this side will actually get split. There's cut halfway, so this part here will actually get removed. So then basically it'll be from this point down to here that it gets bent out, and then this full long one will get bent out to go all the way up to the top of the grill. So for the most part, it's kind of relaxing doing some of this. It's can be noisy at times, but other times it's you just hear a little blower, or else a lot of guys will just have a hand crank forge blower, and those are quieter yet. So that's as deep as I want to go. So now I've basically kind of got a rough shape that I want. I'll go through, and where I cut these, this is a really sharp, jagged edge. I'll go through and file or grind those down just to knock that sharp edge off. And then these will actually get bent straight across, just like a lopsided T. So I got that filed off, so we'll just heat that up, hammer this back to somewhat of a uniform thickness, and bend those out a little bit. I'm not trying to get it super perfect so it's mirror finish because I want to actually see a few little hammer marks and see little imperfections in it, because that gives the whole piece a little bit of character. It's easier to keep everything from bending all out of shape, to keep everything somewhat in the same plane. That way it doesn't get too far out of line, and it's harder to get back into a flat plane. So that's why I kept flipping it back and forth and keeping everything so it's flat. So now we'll just finish up this, and then we'll be ready to form that T shape. So you got a fairly straight line, and your curves are somewhat even. And that's basically what we want to end up with. What I'll show now is the side piece. The side pieces are laid over the top of the top and bottom piece. Well, they need to have a little bit of an offset in them so that on the whole back of it, it's flush on the back. So I made up this tool. It's got a little offset in there. So then basically when I put the piece in here, and then that gets hammered together, that'll actually bend a little Z-shaped offset in there, the thickness of the metal, which will allow those two pieces to fit over nice and flat. So you got that good and red hot. So then this actually gets set in there just like that. So then you end up with a little bit of an offset. That's just the thickness of the metal. So the other part sits so everything is flush on the back. I'll show you how to rivet. So this we'll drill the holes and get things set up for a rivet. So we'll heat this up. It's a nice cherry red, and that'll allow me to just hammer that down, and that'll just drive itself right down in there and expand into that hole. When I do a rivet, I like to drive it straight down. And once I get it down to the thickness, then I like to hit it on all four sides, and that gives it four nice facets on there. So then this piece here that I just got done forging, basically that's done, pretty well done. So then what I do is I just trim that off to size depending on the amount that's needed to go around that loop. This will get hammered out just a little bit more, and those all get bent up at 90 degrees. They get set on that through the slots, then they get heated up and just tapped over and into place. So when this gets put on the door, that'll make a nice decorative door grill. But as years go by, from the time that I first started this, you start out with kind of some basic tooling, and then as your work develops, you develop more tooling to get more complicated designs or more intricate stuff that's involved. So it's kind of an ever-evolving kind of a learning process. it just always keeps growing.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.